Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Samupe jumpe dietia. Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Oh, ayum pamchima. Chimtu asam pamchima. Chimtu agratum chima. Era one,
Good evening, my people and my peeps. You are back on the Era One Radio, show. This is the Divine Connection show where divinity meets humanity. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Modern Ghana Radio, and Garden Radio. Tonight is an exciting night for me. I have a new guest. I've been, praying and waiting for him for a long time, and I think the Holy Ghost said it is tonight. So I'm excited to have my guest. I'll introduce him in a jiffy. But then before we go on, if you want to join this program, and I actually want you to, the number to call is 240-280-2633. Or if you want a text, it's 510-9310946. Again, we are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Modern Ghana Garden Radio, and Modern Ghana Studio, whatever you want to call it. Tonight, we are looking at this very crucial topic: how to find strength and confidence to lead through hard times. Of course, you'll bear with me that we are in very hard times. Just last week or this week, we heard about the Silicon Valley, smash and the crash and all that. I know some of you are being jittery and you are scared, or your money is gone, all that stuff. But then in the midst of all this, how do you lead as a leader? And so tonight, our guest speaker is going to tell us how to find strength and confidence to lead in such a tumultuous time. All right, so let me introduce my guest and then we'll get rolling. He's somebody I've known for years. Actually, we all go to the same church, and he's a leader by every word that you can think about. And so I'm going to discuss. So when you see him somewhere, you don't just call him by, excuse me, you know who he is. All right, so my guest tonight is a handsome young man by name Dr. James Bryant. He holds a PhD, professional engineer. He's a founder and CEO of Engineer Your Success, that's LLC, a boutique coaching, consulting, and leadership development firm in Richmond, Virginia, which helps engineering leaders win at work and at home. All right, so this is a top. This phrase is a topic that we have to discuss sometime, Doc. How to win at work and at home.
Yeah,
very awesome. Dr. Bryant believes that you can build the business of your dreams and have a life that you absolutely love. He has over 20 years of experience leading teams and organizations in the private and public sectors, and is the host of the Engineer Your Success podcast. I'm telling you, you have to watch and listen to that awesome program that he does. Dr. Bryant is a professional engineer, a certified John Maxwell leadership speaker. He's a trainer and a coach. And most importantly, he's a loving husband and father. And may I add that he's a loving father to two sons, whom I have the pleasure of being their youth leader. All right, so before I go on, well, today is the 14th day of March. I don't know whose birthday it is, but if you are celebrating your birthday in March, I just want to shout them happy birthday to you. All the March borns, happy birthday to you. I know my friend Fitete in Canada celebrates a birthday today, and all of you that are celebrating your birthday, a shout out to you. All right, Dr. Bryant, James, as I call him. Yes. Any shout outs? Anybody you want to wish your wife, your family, anybody want to give a shout out to?
I'll give a shout out to you for having me on the show. So I really appreciate that. And also a shout out to your audience who is listening and going to be engaged, and I believe is going to be blessed by the content that we're going to share. Of course, for those of you that are looking at the video, I have pictures of my family and friends all of behind me. So shout out to my lovely wife, Melba, my oldest son, James III, and my younger son, Nathaniel, and then everybody who has poured into me throughout my life, because I would not be here. I would not be who I am and where I am if it not for people taking the time to pour into me. So as you're listening to this, I want you to be grateful for the people that have poured into your life. And I also want you to then take some time to pour into someone else's life.
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. James Bryant. Well, we have Dr. James in the studio. Please Share this link. Share this link to your Facebook friends, your YouTube friends. It's also on Modern Ghana Radio. Share and listen, because this discussion you wouldn't find in any textbook. It is right here happening live in the studio on Facebook, YouTube, and Modern Ghana Radio Live. All right, it's a pleasure having you, Dr. James, once again. All right, so tonight we are looking at how to find strength and confidence to lead in hard times. So it looks as if this pertains more to leaders, but then of course, it pertains to everybody. So we'll be learning all the nuggets that our teacher tonight, our lecturer, our professor is going to teach us. And of course, on divine connection, we don't do anything without the Bible. That is our textbook. Divine connection means where divinity intercepts humanity, where we have the godly aspect of our life. So whatever we do on this studio, at the end of it all, it brings glory to God and it elevates humanity and help us to get closer to our maker and be nice to each other. So we go vertically to God and we go horizontally to humanity. That is the the L shape that we all have to. Those of you who did the Y and the X axis in schools, you understand what I'm talking about. The Y and the X intercept. That is where divinity meets humanity. All right. Doc, I'm going to, with your permission, read our text for tonight. We are looking at Judges chapter 6, verse 11 through 16, and then we'll just make a detour to Matthew 19, verse 26. So let me read this thing from my other screen real quickly, and then we'll take it from there. All right. Okay. So, well, I'm reading from the King James. You can read whatever edition you want to read from. I know Pastor Con tells me that King James is most favorite version. So, but then I'll read from here. Judges chapter 6, verse 11 through 16. It says, "And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites." 12. "And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. And Gideon said unto him, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where be all his miracles, which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not the Lord bring us out from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites." 14. "And the Lord looked upon him and said, Go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee?" 15. "And he said unto him, O my Lord, herewith shall I save Israel. Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and am the least in my father's house." 16. "And the Lord said unto him, Surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man." Let me quickly read Matthew, and then Dr. James will wrap both together for us. Matthew 19:26. This is how it says, "But Jesus beheld their thoughts and said unto them," beheld their thoughts. So this guy can even read the minds of people. I don't know whether Jesus was like what we call modern days a psychic. He was just reading people's mind. "But Jesus beheld their thoughts and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but if they will forsake all things for my sake, with God whatsoever things I speak are possible." With God all things are possible. All right, Doc, I will now hand over for you to give us what the Bible people will say, exegesis, that long word. They like to use those words to just confound some of us who haven't been to, but exegesis.
Yeah, I don't know about all of those long words, but what I will say is when we were talking about coming to the show and thinking about what to talk about, one of the key concepts that came to me is lead from who you are and where you are. And part of the way that comes out is being able to find strength and confidence to be able to lead in the tough times. There are times when we are praying for God to remove those tough times. We're praying for God to take it away. But that very thing that we want God to take away may be the tool that God uses to shape our future.
Powerful.
That may be the tool where we are building up the strength to be able to go to that next level and stay at that next level, right? You're building up your stamina, you're building up your strength, and resistance is required. Your resistance is required, not your resistance to God, but your resistance to the circumstances that you are confronting, your resistance to despair, your resistance to giving up. So, if we look back at the text and you're looking at the story of Gideon, one, he's hiding, and he's there at the wine press threshing wheat. he's hiding. And God comes to him and says, hey, mighty man of valor. God is validating who he is. And Gideon's like, woo, wait a minute. You got the wrong cat. You got the wrong guy. That's not me. And in fact, if God is supposed to be God, why are all of these tough things happening to us? Why did all of these things happen to us if God is God? And he, to me, he is voicing a frustration that is probably not just his own, but it's a frustration that he has. And in that frustration, God, the Lord then says, go in your might, right? Go in this might, this same frustration, this same indignation that you have, go in this might and smite the Midianites. And he turns and he's like, whoa, wait a minute. Now you've empowered me to go. Well, I'm the least of the tribe. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I'm not elegant enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not a leader. There's a whole lot of not enoughs that was going through Gideon's head. And this is where the other scripture comes in, Charles, that maybe in and of his own strength, Gideon wasn't strong enough. Gideon wasn't charismatic enough. Gideon wasn't he may not have been in his mind the leader that they needed. But here's the thing for us as Christians and believers, is that if we have God on the inside of us, then with man, it may seem impossible, but with God, all things are possible.
That's true.
So when we talk about leading from where you are, leading from who you are, don't belittle who you are right now. Don't think that because you have not gotten some type of status, or that you are waiting for another training or another degree or another something for you to be worthy of being the leader, for you to be worthy of doing something great for God, for you to be worthy of doing something great for your community. I believe that God, just like he called Gideon to lead from who he was at that time, even though he didn't think he was ready, God called him to lead. He had the excuse, I'm from the small tribe. God still called him to lead. He called him from that moment to be the leader that would help to deliver his people from the Midianites. So here's a question that I have for you as you're listening. Who is still in bondage because you refuse to step up to lead? Who needs to be delivered? Who does this message, your message, need to be communicated to, that it's not being communicated to them because you're saying, I'm not good enough? You are. With God, all things are possible.
Doc, before you continue, this is very profound, very profound. And I want us to revisit Gideon's situation. It looks as if this guy was expressing this thought that we always come across, like inferiority complex. Will I be right to say that this guy had a inferiority complex issue or something?
Yeah, I would say yes. He was expressing a feeling that he just wasn't good enough for anything. For him, he wasn't even saying, I'm not good enough to be a leader. He's just saying, I'm not good. I'm from the smallest tribe. I'm not your guy. You need to get somebody else. You need to get someone that looks like a leader. You don't need me. So yeah, it's an inferiority complex. Sometimes for even professionals and other folks, it's imposter syndrome, because God is saying, hey, you're great. You're a mighty man of valor. And you're looking and saying, no, I'm not. I'm not me. Even if God has done great things through you in the past, sometimes that inner voice will tell you, no, it's not you. God's not going to use you. God can't use you. You've been through these things. God can't use that. God can use anything. He can use anything.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, God can use anything. And, sometimes when God visits his people, the first thing they want to say is, God, I'm not good enough. And a similar, I don't want to take us out of context, but a similar thing happened to Moses when he was shepherding his father-in-law's, sheep, animals. He had an encounter with God and he said, no, God, I'm not eloquent enough. The man who is the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God who is calling you, say, man, you can do it. And you are standing before him and telling him, I cannot speak enough. I mean, do we sometimes lose sight of ourselves? And let me take this one notch higher. Sometimes we see ourselves in a different context. We make society dictate too much to us. We look at ourselves, not even in the mirror, but then we look at the height of some people and we decide, okay, we are not good enough. But meanwhile, the one who is sending you is the all-powerful sending you. And we make excuses. I don't know whether it's something that we just come up with, or when we come into contact with Almighty, it just dawns upon us to just lay prostrate and say, God, please use the next person. Are we always shifting the blame to somebody or asking God to use the other neighbor?
Yeah, and I think part of that is that we all have blind spots. So, if you're driving in a car and you are looking, they have all of those mirrors in the different places so that you can see that blind spot, right? So that you don't veer over and you can see what's coming. But I think each of us has a blind spot for ourselves at times. And although other people can see our greatness, other people can see what God is doing in our lives, we can't see it sometimes. We can't see it because it's in our blind spot. It's in that space where we're looking at everything else except what God is doing through us. And I mean, sometimes now the same is true. Sometimes we have blind spots for the things that we're not good at. And that we should be doing better. There's a blind spot, and I think everybody has a blind spot. So part of the next step is understanding that the Holy Spirit is here to lead us and to guide us into all truth. And if you do have a blind spot, if you're not able to see the leader that is within you from where you are right now, from who you are right now, then that's part of your prayer life. That's part of going to God, asking God to reveal that in a way to you to make it plain so that you can then take the action that God is leading you to take.
Powerful. All right, let me ask this question. I think you hinted on it briefly. Is being strong and having the strength to do something the same thing? I did the same.
No.
Okay, explain. No. All right.
I mean, strength takes many different shapes and forms. Right. You can, when I think of being strong, sometimes I think of being inflexible. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be inflexible. I'm going to have a strong stance. But sometimes strength requires for us to take a more delicate approach. Sometimes strength requires us to yield on certain things, not on godly things, but just in terms of in a conversation or in a discussion, there's flexibility that's there. So being strong, to me, is a little bit different than having the strength to keep going. So strength to me, in that sense, denotes endurance. And when I think of strong, I'm thinking big muscles. I can lift something heavy, but having the strength to endure is something I see as ongoing.
All right. Let me take a quick jingle, and then when we come back, we'll dive into confidence and how we can relate to that.
Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Jumpedia Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Oh, and Pampuma Asam Pampuma era one yebo numpankua.
They are four women. They are beautiful with brains. They are eloquent, decent, wise, and experienced. You have heard many, the funny. Now, it's time to hear the experience and the brainy. Meet Selena, Dorcas, Gifty, and Annette as they present the real in common getting. In common BISS chain, the dead, as in Takrenu assume the dead, the real in common getting. Showing live this and every Sunday, 7 p.m. on Era One Radio on Facebook and on YouTube, Era One Radio and on Taibo channel. Kaise, so we tie the real in common kitten kittia. What brabontete? We nyan konkonsa. We the real in common kitten kitty.
Still with us on Era One Radio. We are broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. And tonight, I have the august and the pleasurable pleasure of having my own good friend, Dr. James Bryant, in the hot seats on the other side of the studio. Well, yeah, before that, he was trying to tell us the difference between being strong and having strength not being the same thing, which I, kind of take it because he's a professor and he's a doctor. So whatever he says, I'll take it at this time. Amen. All right. Now, Doc, my other question is confidence gender bias? What I mean is, does it relate to one type of gender, whether male or female, or these days we even have more than two genders? So, I will not mention the other one, but then is confidence gender bias? Do one gender has it more than the other?
I don't know. I think you can hear different studies that will talk about there being somewhat of a gender bias, but the interesting thing is, at least in my experience, in a lot of different churches here in the United States, most of the women seem to have more confidence than the men. So it may be different in the actual working, and I'm not talking against the guys or anything like that. It's just what I see in terms of the confidence to lead, the confidence to be humble, the confidence to serve. I see that more growing up. I've seen that more growing up in women, let me say, than men. I'm not sure of what the numbers and how that would bear out now. But what I do believe is that the lack of confidence comes from a lot of different places, whether it's how you grew up in the environment that you were exposed to, when you were growing up, your general life experience. It could be very similar to what Gideon is saying. Hey, look at my history. Look at what has happened to me and my people in my life. And you're telling me that I'm a mighty man of valor? No, I don't have the confidence for that. And if you go further along in Judges, God begins to really speak to Gideon and have them take one step of faith after another step of faith to get him ready for the battle. And so the confidence is built over time. And as we seek God and as we are doing what God would have us to do step by step, we're able to build confidence. Not only, now confidence is in him, but we're able to build confidence in our ability to hear him. We're able to build confidence in our ability to obey him and to execute his instructions.
Awesome. So from what I said, you alluded to the fact that women sometimes might have more confidence than men, which should have presupposed that if it wasn't for culture, would have more women proposing to men than the other way around.
I think you may be right, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think society has frowned on the fact that women should not propose to men. But every now and then I hear from other cultures of the world that some of the women will come out. Yeah, I am ready. Yeah, come and I'll propose to another. Anyway, that is just by the way. But then let's go back to our topic. We are looking at how to find strength and confidence to lead, which means leadership is very crucial, very important, and very imperative. All right. So now tell me, why is it very important? Because all of us need confidence and strength. Why is it very important for a leader to have so much confidence and strength over the people he or she leads?
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. A leader does not have to have so much confidence and strength. The leader needs to have enough confidence and strength as a grain of mustard seed, because the confidence and strength is coming from God, right? So that's number one. So it is not like you have to have the confidence and strength to take on an army. You have to have the confidence and strength to listen and obey, believe and take action. But it's important that the leader has that, because, have you ever been in a group of people and everybody's trying to figure out, what to do. And then someone says, well, why don't we do that? And everybody else is much more easy for them to get some assent and agree and start moving in a certain direction. I mean, you need leadership to help bring direction, be leadership to help guide and influence the people that are around you. And here's the thing. Each of us are uniquely designed, at least I believe that each of us are uniquely designed by God to be a blessing to other people whom have been uniquely designed for us to bless. So there are people that are going to hear. So I'll give you an instance. So I'll have people on my podcast when I was doing guests, and people would say, "Why are you bringing other experts, other leadership coaches, other people on your podcast?" And my answer was, there are people that have been uniquely designed to hear their voice. They can hear me, but they may not receive from me. But there's somebody who is designed and God has put it in them to make that connection when that other people is talking. And so what's more important for me in that regard is for that other person to be blessed, for that other person to be reached, than it is for me to kind of be the only expert that's on my show.
That's great. Yeah, because sometimes variety, they say, is a spice of life. And when people get to hear other people, it kind of, authenticates whatever is being said. I mean, sometimes when I don't have guests, I do a solo show. But within me, that is not how I designed this show. I didn't want to be a solo doing everything. But then when you bring guests like you who are knowledgeable in what they are talking about, people say, oh, it's not Charles speaking. We have an expert there. So whatever the expert says, we will take it, But then
No, but that, I mean, I've done a mix of solo shows and a mix of guest episodes, and there is no right or wrong way. But I think it's just, there are people that are uniquely designed to hear what you have to say. They're wired to receive from you.
That's great. But let me just make this joke that one of the reasons why I got a PhD, not this very reason, but one of the reasons why I got a PhD, somebody told me, if you're a doctor, you have a PhD, whatever you say, whether it's nonsense or crap, people take it. So I said, what? Let me struggle. Even if I have to take a student, let me struggle and get a PhD. Then whatever I say, people will take that as the gospel. Although that is not a very good reason to go about it. Yeah. And of course, when you write a book, one time, actually, when I wrote my first book in Ghana, Spiritual Militants, I showed it to a pastor, and I wanted to launch it in a grand style. And he looked straight into my face and told me, Charles, people are not going to buy your book because of the information you are carrying or bringing across. They will buy because of who you are. I looked at this, I said, wow. And to some extent, it makes sense, because, okay, if you have this huge name, on this book or this podcast or something, I mean, right now, if I start a podcast, you're going to ask who is Charles Boison. But when I mentioned Dr. James Bryant is my mentor, so I'm starting, maybe they will give me some credibility. It is what it is.
I think there are two things there. And that's people, the people that you know, and what problem are you actually solving in the book or the podcast? And this is delving away from the main topic, but it's one that's near and dear to me in terms of communication, is really understanding whom you're communicating to. And if you're in a business perspective, is being able to define what problem that you solve, not from your perspective, but from their perspective. You have to be able to articulate it from their perspective.
That is true. And going back to our topic, when you were discussing the confidence of the leader, it is true that, in a situation where there is not even riots, but then where a decision has to be made on the feet, right there and then, it is not anybody at all who can make a decision. There are times when you have to say, guys, let me go think about it and come back to you. But there are situations where a real-time decision is needed at that very appropriate time. So you can't tell your people, wait and let me go and make a decision and come. You have to be able to make it right there. And you should not be found jittering or, being nervous. You have to stand on your toes and be able to make a decision that your subordinates or the people looking to you can take it. Yes, this is a real leader. So it's very good as we have, of course, you said it comes from God, but you should have that confidence that coming from God or your intellect or whatever, you should be able to make real-time decisions. That is why it's very important, I believe, that leaders should be able to have that strength and the confidence to stand in the midst of situation. Other people will find you as cheap or weak leader or whatever. It's very imperative that Christians need to pray for timely interventions, for timely, decisions that actually shows how confident we are, even in the word of God, as far as giving out to people. All right, let's revisit Gideon's response, or what happened in verse 13, if I may just go
Okay.
back. It says, Gideon laments that if the Lord is with them, why would they be experiencing the defeat, shame, and hardship they were going through? Do believers find it appropriate to complain to God about their hardships, or we are simply taking life as it is? Because some people think, okay, you go to God and you worship, you pray, but then some people do it to the extreme of, just complaining,
Yeah.
complaining. So do you think in this context, did Gideon was being realistic or he was going
I
overboard?
think Gideon was being real. Gideon, well, one, I think he was taken off guard. He's, again, think of the context. The Midianites would come, take away everything that was good in the harvest and stuff that was happening with the people of Gideon. And then, so he's hiding, threshing wheat because he didn't want them to come steal it.
Okay.
All right. So let's understand. Then in that context, you have, the Lord coming and say, "Hey, mighty man of valor." What? What are you calling me? Don't you see I'm hiding? Don't you see that I'm afraid? Don't you see who I actually am? And then I think he's taken off guard, and sometimes the response is going to be lashing out. So you lash out with what you're thinking. Whether it's complaints or whatever it is, he's talking about, hey, well, if God is real, why are all of these things happening? And listen, a lot of people have these questions. If God is real, why did this happen? If God loves me, why did that happen? If God if God was really for me, then why did my business fail? It could be, if God is for me, why did the bank fail? It could be all kinds of things
Yes. Okay.
that comes up. And I think the way that I look at that, Charles, is that you have to be real. If that's where you are, then you need to be real. I take my clients through a process called mirror moments, where you see yourself for who you are, not who you project to be. And I think at that moment, Gideon was being real with who he was. This is what he thought. This is who he was. Because if there are things that you are struggling with, if there are things you're struggling with in your faith, there are things you're struggling with in your life, you have to be able to take hold of those things and bring them to God. If you don't take hold of them, if you don't acknowledge them, if you don't do anything with them, then they're going to stay right there with you and be a thorn in your side. They're going to stay right there with you and be an impediment to your progress. And so part of being real, part of being transparent is saying, God, look, here's what I'm thinking. Here's where I am. I know it doesn't sound good, but here is where I am. God, help me. Help me.
Great. I want to look at Gideon's prayer one more time, or his request or his complaints. And I believe maybe your son, James Jr. or Nathan have come to you and asked questions, because I know Gideon was being, very, very realistic. How do you explain to a child, somebody, young, immature in the faith, of all the things that go on around us? Because I know somebody told me that the person was praying and he was asking God to do something about the situation at stake. And from the story, it's like the Holy Spirit was telling me, you go ahead and do something about it. It's like God has given you the power and the strength to do it. And we know that the devil, well, is also lingering around and so on. Unfortunately, most people blame everything on the devil. And I keep telling people the devil himself needs to be born again one day, so nobody can blame him for the things that happen. People do stuff and so it's the devil that made me do. I mean, if your own intentions, your own whims and caprices lead you to do stuff and they blame it on the devil. So it's not the devil everything that I blame on the devil, But then going back to the question, going back to that question, how do you explain to a juvenile, younger kid, that some of the things that happen around us, we can ask questions, but then God has given us the ability and the strength to do something about them?
No, I think it's what you just said. I encourage my children to ask questions, to explore their thoughts, their feelings, what they're, how they're feeling, what they're thinking about certain things. I think that is healthy. Then it comes, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? There are some things that happen where we don't have any control. We still have to give that to God. There are other things that happen or other situations where we do have control. And I guess what I would say is that the one thing that we always have control over is how we respond to the things that happen to us. That's not the devil. That's not on God. That's on us. And being able to cultivate the habit of responding well is something that we can do and we can practice every day.
Wow. I'm enjoying this conversation very much. And I don't want to be straightly bound to standard operating procedures like an SOP. This is how I want it to go. I just want us to bounce around and just have a live conversation. So let me take us back to the 15 and the 16. The 15, I think, expresses how Gideon was expressing his inferiority complex, being, "Oh Lord, where shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my father's house." I think a similar example happened when Saul was also talking about where he came from, the Saul that became the first king of Israel. But then let me focus on 16. This is what 16 says. "And the Lord said unto him, Surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man." So he alone was going to do that. Well, of course, with God's strength. Gideon spoke with naivety and wondered how God would save them. Later in the Gospels, let me draw our minds to, the New Testament. For those of you who say we are not using both of the standards of the Bible, let me draw attention to the New Testament. Later in the Gospels, Zachariah asked the angel how God was going to give him a son. When the angel appeared unto him before he went to see Mary, that your prayers have ascended to God and he's going to give you a son who later they will name John and all that. So when the angel told him about this incident, the funny thing is that the angel, by the powers endowed to him by God, made Zachariah deaf and dumb. He couldn't speak. But then here we have Gideon in the Old Testament. He is talking back to the angel of God, for that matter. "I am the least in my father's house," and all that. So now let's lay this in juxtaposition. Gideon and Zachariah. Zachariah gets to be dumb and deaf. Gideon gets a pass. Nothing happens to him. Was God being soft on Gideon, or because he was a novelty?
No, I don't think that God was being soft on Gideon. I think that God was shaping Gideon for the task that he had. So if you continue to read in Judges, I think the very next thing that happens is that God tells Gideon to tear down the
idol worship.
The idol worship. It was the altar to Baal and the Asherah pole. Tear that down, and then go take his father's fattened calf and build a new altar and make an offering to God. Now, Gideon, and here's something to take from that. And Charles, if you find the actual text, you can read it. But here's something that, as folks go back to, that you can take from that point, is that Gideon listened to God, but he was afraid of his father and afraid of what the people would do. Exactly. So Gideon, along with his servants, went out at night and did what God would have him to do. Gideon was still scared. He was still afraid, but he did it. He took action. And so don't think that because you feel fear or because there's some hesitancy that you can't take action. You can. So Gideon goes on. He, that night, tears down the altars to the false gods, builds an altar to God, and does the sacrifice. In the morning, the people wake up and they're trying to figure out, like what happens, what in the world happened. They figure that it was Gideon. They go to the house. Gideon's father comes out and he's like, "Hey guys, what's going on? We need to kill him because he took down the altar of Baal." And Gideon's father's response, I thought, was pretty cool. And it was, well, if Baal is God, let him contend for himself. Exactly. Let him strike Gideon down. Let him take action. And so the whole point is that even in the face of fear, you can still take action and lead. You can lead while you're afraid.
You can lead while you're afraid. Wow, that is profound. You can lead whilst you're afraid. Yeah. But if you take in Gideon's situation, that is true. You can lead whilst you're afraid. Inwardly, you are scared, but then you have the Almighty behind you. Well,
it's still, but it's not going to take a. See, that's the thing. I think that's the thing that we often miss. Having God behind us doesn't necessarily take away the fear. It may give us the strength to push past the fear, or the strength to take action in the presence of fear, but it doesn't always remove the fear.
That's true. Well, of course, we are humans too, so that element will always be there.
Yeah, we're humans too. I mean, you think how many times did God have to tell Joshua, fear not, fear not, fear not, fear not?
That is true. I mean, you would think that just one fear not should solve the problem, but he knew that several times he would be scared.
Yeah. If you there are many times when it's time to lead, it's time to take that next step, and fear comes. And I will say, from a human design perspective, fear's job is to keep us safe, right? So I'm not giving fear a bad rap. It's to keep you safe and to keep things the same. It just means you should have a heightened level of awareness. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't take action.
That's true. Well, on that note, let me take a quick ad so you can get some water to drink, and then we'll continue.
Okay.
Hello, beautiful people of Ghana. This is Banahine Specialist Hospital. We are so excited to announce to our people Ghana that we are finally opened and we are accepting patients. At Banahine Specialist Hospital, our extraordinary physicians and nurses are here to provide a high-quality medical service to our extraordinary patients. Our services include primary care services, maternal, neonatal, and pediatric services. We also have an in-house pharmacy. We have x-ray and laboratory services available to you. Come to us for all your healthcare needs, and you will be happy you did, because we believe the health is wealth. Thank you, and stay blessed.
Yes. We are back on Era One Radio, broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube, also Modern Ghana Radio. It's my pleasure having Dr. James Bryant on the other side of the studio, helping us discuss and even understand better how to find strength and confidence in the midst of difficulties to lead the people that you do. Of course, leading also means leading yourself. You have to lead yourself first before you can lead others. All right, let me digress a little bit, Dr. James. Are leaders born? Are they made, or both?
Both.
I
think both.
All right.
But what I would say is that, again, my whole premise is that you lead from where you are and who you are. So regardless of what you've accomplished to date or what you've been through to date, there's someone who you can help. And so I think sometimes when we think about leadership, we're thinking of large organizations, or I'm going to be on stage talking to thousands of people, or I'm going to be like a Dr. Charles on a radio show, broadcasting live to millions of people, but no, you can go to your neighbor next door. You can go to the person in your neighborhood. You can talk to the person in the store, because leadership at the end of the day is all about influence. And we're influencing people all day long. It's not about command and control. I think, we think of leadership from the standpoint of command and control. I say I tell you what to do and you do it. But in reality, leadership is all about influence and your ability to connect and influence people to move in the direction that you think is going to be best for that greater good, best for your company, best for your organization, best for your church, best for your group, or best for that individual.
Well, on that note, would you say, do we have a leadership crisis globally in the world? Do we have crisis where confidence and strength are lacking? Do we have leadership issues?
I would say yes, we have leadership issues, but it's not just leadership at the top, it's leadership at every level. And you mentioned it when we came back from the break, is that in order to be a leader, you must first lead yourself. And so it's taking that personal responsibility and ownership for what our decisions are, for what our actions are, for the role that we can play, and leading that. It's me leading myself. It's me being a leader in my family. It's me being a leader in my local church. It's me being a leader in a men's group. It's me being a leader wherever I show up. So now if everyone shows up and leads from where they are, from who they are, the world will be a much different place. And again, leadership is influence. So we're not talking about command and control where everybody is telling everybody else what to do, but we're all influencing each other to move forward.
Good. All right. So when it comes to leadership, I know we are trying to train those children. I keep telling them you can't teach an old dog new tricks. They're already grown and old, so it's very difficult teaching those old people to groom them from from that age. So when I meet the youth, I say you guys are the future leaders, and we can train you, to move you here and there to become what you want to be in future. So it's very important. But then going back on this leadership issue, and we already made a point clear that you have to lead yourself first before you become, the leader that you want to be globally. Now let's look at men, female, and males. Do you think women, female species have been kind of put down when it comes to leadership? Because I know most of our women are trying to become, vie for presidency, and so far, apart from a vice president, we haven't had any woman president, which also forms part of leadership. What can we do?
Well, first, I think historically, absolutely, there has been a movement, a history of not allowing women to lead, not putting women in the position to grow as leaders, right? Not looking at them at the same level. That's absolutely wrong. Women can be fantastic leaders, and so it's not. But historically, I would say, yes, that has happened. I think what we do is continue to use the influence that we have. So if it's me being on my podcast, is highlighting those women engineers and entrepreneurs. It is really creating what I call pathways of entry. If there's someone that I can introduce a woman engineer to help further her career, then I think it's up to me to make that connection. I think sometimes in the past, you may not think about that connection, but it's being intentional about the steps that you can take in your sphere of influence. My sphere of influence is going to be different than yours, Charles. And so I think it's up to each of us to take that responsibility to begin to make those pathways to help build a brighter future for women as a whole.
Well, we have 10 minutes to roll away, and it's been a very awesome conversation. I'm enjoying it. But then let me go back to, since we are on leadership and confidence, and they say what a man can do, a woman can do better. Do you think if we have a first real, first actual, we have a vice president, first woman president, things will change? We'll get a better situation?
It depends on whether or not that individual is emotionally intelligent, and whether they have the political capital to move their agenda or the agenda of their political party forward. Because again, leadership is influence, and in that realm, the political capital that they have is what leads to influence. And so, if that individual, a female president, comes in a landslide election, that party wins the House and the Senate here in the U.S., then that may be viewed by some as a mandate, and that would be a lot of political capital for that particular individual and for that party.
Awesome. Well, that's why we are a doctor, professor, podcast, hood and all that stuff. We are getting closer to the end of our discussion tonight. I want us to address everything we wanted to address. So I want us to look at the Matthew 19 concerning the with God all things are possible.
Yes.
And how do we escalate our faith with God's purpose to experience the possibility of all things? Because Jesus told his disciples that if they believed in him, the things that he did, they would do more than that. And sometimes, let me just take our mind to walking on the water. Apart from Peter, of course, started by Jesus. Peter is the only man we know that has walked on real water, not the swimming pool. I mean, we can't even have people walking on swimming pool. So You can't even try on the swimming pool unless you put a board across it from one end to one end and then walk on it. But then real defying gravity and walking on water, I can count of Jesus and Peter, well, unless maybe you have tried it. All right. So with this impossibility, how do we get our faith to the point where we can recognize with God, reckon with God that all things are possible? Do we lack faith, or how do we get to that level?
See, so all right. I think conceptually, we can think about, you got to have a whole lot of faith to walk on water, or you have to have a whole lot of faith to move a mountain. Say to this mountain be, thy removed, and it'll be removed.
Cast into the sea, yeah.
It'll be cast into the sea. So on the one end, I would say that it's not about so much elevating our faith as it is to deconstructing it and making it childlike and small, in terms of having the moving away all of the other resistance and the reality as we know it, and approaching it from a position of curiosity and saying with God, all things are possible. Now that faith doesn't have to be huge or large. It's the size of a grain, of size of a mustard seed.
Mustard seed, the smallest.
A mustard seed. So, we keep thinking about this. I have to have more faith. I have to have more faith. No, I don't. I have to have faith of the size of a mustard seed. That's
the smallest.
The smallest. But it has to be applied the right way. It has to be, my faith has to be in God, in his ability to move things forward. Right. So we get caught into that trap, I think, a lot.
All right. Speaking about the faith, the mustard seed. I don't know whether you know about this, but a few months ago, of course, you know about the earthquake that happened in Turkey. And unfortunately, we had one of our Ghanaian players who was caught in the rubble, and he died. And I remember when they found him, naive. I mean, is it naivety or naively? I prayed that God, I want to go to Turkey. I want to go and resurrect this guy. I want to preach to the Turkians so they will believe in Christ. I was making all these pronouncements in my room, but I was serious. I went, grabbed my US passport. I said, God, I am ready. Please send me. I have to go. I want to go and resurrect this guy. Now, this guy will be laid in state. They had this 1 week, I think a week ago. Normally, when somebody dies, the family meets after a week. But now, it's not exactly a week, but they call it a week, where I don't know why they still use the phrase 1 week. But then, he's been dead for some time, and they did a 1 week somewhere last week. So he's actually going to be laid in state this Friday, 17th, and he'll be buried then. There have been a lot of prophets who have been claiming that they can go and resurrect him. So I say, if you want to be like Jesus and Lazarus, go ahead. I want this footballer to come back real bad. I want this guy, 31 years old. He was doing a lot of benevolence acts in Ghana, and everybody's praising him. So this was a blow to people. So I'm just bringing this in between. I'm not putting a question, but I'm just saying that for those of the prophets who have been ranting and raving and making all kinds of noise in Ghana, that one prophet said that he needed 1,000 boots and then 1,000 eggs from the family, and he would resurrect this guy. And I was saying in my head, Lord, when Jesus went to Lazarus' tomb, he didn't ask for anything. He just told the guy, hey, Lazarus, I don't care how many days you are dead, just come out. And you're asking for boots and eggs. Anyway, my point is that those who've been claiming that they want to bring Achuba, please, Friday is going to be laid in state. Don't wait for him to be buried before you say, I could have raised him before they buried him. Friday is going to be laying in state. And all those prophets who have been proclaiming that they want to do it, please, we are waiting. I am anxiously waiting. I have the faith that if you guys say God told you to raise him, please go and do it. Anyway, that was just an announcement. Well, we are coming to the end of our destiny. I just 5 things that I gathered that I just read over is that things you need to do to find inner strength. And one is use the power of reframing to your advantage. Refrain from some things. The things that you speak that are not working, change from them and confess good. Pay attention to what is going on within you, because sometimes your inner strength is enough to give you the confidence. Practice responding rather than reaction to situation. When somebody puts something to you that you don't like, instead of just reacting, just respond in a way that will suit the person. Constantly feed your mind and with positive messages, and focus on small wins. Sometimes we want to wait till we have won big before we celebrate. The small things in life, the little things that you can do. Maybe you went to the gym today, you exercised 30 minutes. That is good. You made it your what is it, resolution this year that you want to lose 10 pounds or you want to gain 20 pounds, whatever it is, you exercise 30 minutes, that is good. So whatever it is, celebrate the small wins. Now, Doc, I'm coming to you. I want you to tell our audience, our listeners, what actually you do with your the podcast and the engineering, the way that people can benefit from what you do. This is where I want you to brag.
Well, I won't brag, but I will talk about myself. Again, my name is Dr. James Bryant. I am the founder and CEO of Engineer Your Success LLC. It's a boutique leadership development, coaching, and consulting firm located here in Richmond, Virginia. Specifically, I target, in terms of the people that I market within the community that I'm building, people with a science, technology, engineering, and math background. And I help them to design a life where they are winning at work and at home. I think it's really important because a lot of high achievers are doing great at work, right? They great salaries, great jobs, great situations, but they don't always have the same, or can't always say the same for their home life. And so, Charles, I ask people 3 questions, 3 simple questions. And here are the questions that I ask. Do you want to win at work? What do you think most people say?
Of course, they'll say yes.
My next question is, do you want to win at home? What do you think most people say?
Definitely.
The last question is, are you winning at work and at home?
That's a big question.
Yeah, and if you answer no to either of those, winning at work or at home, then I can help. And that is really the space where I meet people, in either helping them grow their businesses or helping them grow themselves so that they can win at work and at home.
So which means you don't have to win at work and lose at home. That's bad, huh?
That's correct. It's a win for all situation. You have to reframe and redefine what success looks like for you. And it's not necessarily easy, but you can do it. And I help clients do it all the time.
So how do we get to your podcast? When and when do you hold your podcast so people can listen?
The podcast airs every Tuesday. If you do a search for Engineer Your Success, it should come up. You'll see my face. We also have a YouTube channel, Engineer Your Success. You should be able to find it there. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook as well. And the website is www.engineeryoursuccessnow.com. That's engineeryoursuccessnow.com.
Yeah, I think next time I should be able to type it for our listeners to, hook onto that, because you are a blessing and we want to tap everything that you have. We're not going to let you leave this earth with all those things buried in you. We will tap as much as we want to tap. Well, it's been a pleasure having you tonight. I am awesomely blessed. And if you want to give us any closing remarks before we leave.
Just lead from where you are, who you are. Don't be afraid to take the next step that you believe that God is telling you to do. Whether it's starting your business, having that tough conversation with your friend or your family, doesn't matter what it is. Whatever it is, show that leadership, take action, and know that you have the full faith, not of the U.S. government, but the full faith of God, our Father, behind you, right? You have that backing behind you, that strength that you can tap into, the wisdom that you can tap into, the guidance that you can tap into. It's always there. So don't forget to tap into it.
That's true. Tap into it. Tap. Thank you very much. Well, it's been a pleasure having you tonight. And I know this is not going to be your first or last. I know you'll come back because we have to talk about that topic that I mentioned. We have to be able to win both at work and at home. We have to have a balance, because if you are winning at work, if everybody likes you at work and you come home and you're a disaster, you are failing your ministry. Because even in the pastoral word, if you're a good pastor, you do all you do for your congregation, and you come home and you are a failing husband or wife, you haven't achieved your purpose. So we got to watch. And I know Dr. Bryant will be able to lead us more on that. So, well, I don't want to promise Tuesday because I don't know his schedule, but then we'll talk offline, and anytime it's available. I wish I could bring you every Tuesday, but that would not be fair to you for other.
They would get tired of hearing from me.
Just every Tuesday. I don't think it's going to be too much, but variety is the spice of life in anywhere. So I'm tired of doing solo. So when I get you like that, it takes away that frame of solo from me.
I understand. Listen, I understand. My podcast is on episode 86. So I understand.
Wow.
Yeah, 86 aired today.
Wow, you are doing a massive work. I mean, apart from what you do for the church, your family, and this, I mean, you are blessed. You didn't go to school for nothing. They don't call you doctor for nothing. So thank you very much. Well, on behalf of my studio manager, Dr. Setutu and R1 team, I want to say thank you to Dr. James Bryant for gracing 1 hour and 2 minutes, giving us 1 hour and 2 minutes of his time. Thank you to your wife for releasing you. Thank you for James Jr. and Nathan for releasing you. I think I'll meet them tomorrow at our fellowship. Yeah, so thank you very much, Doc. I'll see you again. Definitely, you have to come back. This has been a blessing. I have enjoyed this conversation. And so take care, and I'll see you very soon.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
This is not your typical tea. The Flamingo Herbal Tea by Glucose Care International is a nutritious drink and a natural blood glucose reducer. Gymnema plant, the active ingredients in the Flamingo Herbal Tea suppresses the absorption of carbohydrate ingested from your diet. The green tea content in the Flamingo Herbal Tea promotes rejuvenation of dead cells, detoxification of your system, stimulates the pancreas to release insulin, and improves metabolism. Drinking 1 sachet of Flamingo Herbal Tea after meals prevents the rise in blood sugar levels, suppresses appetite, and improves bowel movements. Drinking Flamingo Herbal Tea regularly after meals can also prevent type 2 diabetes. We encourage you to drink Flamingo Herbal Tea 3 times in a day, coupled with mild exercises to maximize its benefits. Flamingo Herbal Tea has been approved by the FDA. Toxicity test conducted by SGS, so it is safe and non-toxic. A product of Singapore. With Flamingo Herbal Tea, your peace of mind is guaranteed. Call our shop now on 0245 810 623 and set your path to good health.
Aden urefiana se otumi manya eni about Aden wasua mani suwa fosunyade Aden meba Aden kra ya useni da suasa eni da sonsa kra eni da sonsa yo eni da sonsa ya mensubi eni da sonsa eni da suwa eni da sonsa oh adio get to see eni da sonsa Eden krana mumbefra Onyenwe mo crownse Eden ebedi anaye benom Ana muni kaduyanse Eden krana mumbefra Okransi na duane Nani pabiansin tumana Aden mi ba Aden kra Na ya usani da suasa